My son and his wife returned unannounced. They arrived with bags but left humbled and shaken. When my son Devon packed his bags and moved into his rich mother-in-law's mansion, his wife Candace, who insisted everyone call her Candy, practically floated after him like she just won the lottery. She didn't even pretend to be sad about leaving my house. Her last words still ring in my ears. She leaned out of that shiny imported car Vivien sent and screamed so loud the whole block heard. "Rot in that dusty old house, you washed-up old woman." Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. The neighbors poked their heads out. Mrs. Jenkins from next door, Mr. Powell from across the street. Devon didn't defend me. Didn't tell her to stop. He just closed the trunk, climbed into the car, and rode off without a backwards glance. I stayed rooted on the porch, watching my only son vanish toward the life of marble floors and swimming pools he and Candace thought they deserved. 3 months went by. No calls, no texts. It was as if I'd actually died. People would ask if I'd heard from Devon and I'd force a smile, shrug, and change the subject. Inside, my heart felt like a wet newspaper, torn and useless. To understand how I got to that rainy afternoon when they came back, beaten and broke, you have to know who I was before all of this. My name is Eleanor Thorne, and I'm 64 years old. This modest 2-story house on Detroit's north side is all I own. I bought it 3 decades ago using my husband's life insurance after he died in a construction accident. One ordinary morning, he left for work. He never came home. He left me with debt, a little boy, and that check. I did the only thing that made sense. I bought a roof that couldn't be taken from us. For 25 years I worked as an administrative assistant at a small accounting firm. The pay was modest, but it was steady. I stretched every paycheck, packed every lunch, skipped every new outfit so Devon could have uniforms, books, field trips, and whatever he needed. I played both mother and father, staying up late to help with homework and waking up early to get to work. Every extra dollar went into savings for his education. And somehow, by some miracle, it all worked. Devon got into engineering school, graduated, and landed a good job. The day he received his diploma, I cried so hard my mascara ran down my cheeks. I thought, this is it. All those sacrifices meant something. Then he met Candace. He brought her home after a company conference. She worked in public relations, dressed like she was stepping off a magazine cover, and sniffed at my little house as if she'd walked into a thrift store. I greeted her with open arms, like I do with everyone. She stuck out her hand like she was being forced to touch something sticky. Her eyes flicked over my second-hand dress, my old shoes, the faded wallpaper. In a few seconds I felt completely judged. 6 months later, they were married. It was a small wedding because that's all we could afford. Vivien, her mother, didn't bother to come, just mailed an expensive gift and a cold note about business in Europe. I cooked everything myself. Mac and cheese, greens, fried chicken, the kind of food that had people licking their fingers. I heard Candace whisper to her cousin, "This tastes like cheap takeout." After the wedding they moved into my house for a little while, just until they could save up. I was secretly thrilled. I scrubbed and aired out the biggest room upstairs, put on fresh sheets, and imagined dinners together, holidays, maybe even grandbabies. From the very first night, the complaints started. The house smells old. The bathroom is tiny. These couches look like you found them on the curb. Every day she found a new flaw. At first Devon laughed nervously, making excuses. "She's just used to something else, Mom. You know, she grew up different." I swallowed my hurt, kept cooking, kept washing, kept trying to make things comfortable. Candace stopped eating my food entirely, claimed it was too greasy, too basic, and started ordering takeout from expensive places, leaving the trash for me to throw away. She had friends over and apologized to them for "this little place we're stuck in for now," as if my home was a temporary inconvenience instead of the roof that had sheltered her husband his whole life. Then Vivien began to visit. She never visited so much as inspected. She'd glide in wearing designer dresses and diamonds that sparkled too bright, sit delicately on the edge of my sofa, as if poverty were contagious, and talk non-stop. She praised Devon for rising above his background, and told him he could go far with the right people behind him. Then she'd glance at me and say things like, "It's admirable that you managed to do anything at all with so little." I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth hurt. But I smiled through it, for Devon's sake. I convinced myself that if I stayed kind and patient, eventually they would see my heart. I didn't yet understand that some people don't see kindness, they see a doormat. One Friday, Vivien came to dinner. I scrubbed the house from top to bottom, put fresh flowers on the table, and made a simple but nice meal. Candace hadn't looked me in the eye all week, but that night she seemed oddly cheerful. Over dinner, Vivien bragged about her estate, her business, her trips. Then she looked at Devon with a soft, practiced smile. "Why don't you move in with me, dear? I've got a whole unused wing, 3 bedrooms, a private balcony, your own bathrooms. Candace would be much happier. You could focus on your career without." She let the sentence die as her eyes slid around my dining room. The silence was so heavy I could hear the clock ticking. I forced my lips to move. "Devon has to decide what's best for him," I said, even as my stomach twisted. And of course, he decided. Within a week, they were packing. The days between the offer and moving day were torture. Devon avoided me, saying he was busy. Candace floated through the house like a queen waiting to be crowned, bragging on the phone about the mansion, the gardens, the heated pool, careful not to mention me at all. 2 nights before they left, I found Devon alone in the kitchen. "Are you sure this is what you want?" I asked quietly. "This will always be your home." He put the glass down too hard. "Mom, I'm not a kid. I need to build my own life. Candy isn't happy here. And you?" I whispered. He walked out without answering. A moving day came. They took only their clothes and personal things. Most of the furniture was mine. Candace made sure every item I'd given them went into a box as if she meant to erase me. When the rental truck pulled away, Vivien's car rolled up. She honked twice, like summoning pets. Candace practically sprinted to the car. Devon carried the last suitcase. For just a heartbeat, our eyes met and I saw guilt. Then Candace called his name, and his face went blank. "Take care, Mom," he mumbled and turned away. "Devon, wait." Too late. He slid into the car. Candace rolled down the window, wearing that hateful victorious smirk. "Rot in that dusty old house, you washed-up old hag. We're going to live right, not like rats in this dump." The engine roared. The neighbors watched. I stood there, humiliated and hollow, until Mrs. Jenkins put her arms around me and said, "That woman is shameless. And your boy should be ashamed." I didn't want comfort. I went inside, closed the door, sat on the old sofa Candace had mocked, and cried until my throat hurt. I cried for my son, for the years I'd given, for the public insult. Days turned into weeks. I checked my phone constantly at first. Nothing. Devon didn't call once. People brought food like someone had died, and in a way someone had, the version of my son I thought I knew. One night, I heard spray cans hissing outside. Some teenagers had written, "The Abandoned Woman's House," across my front wall. I scrubbed it off by myself, refusing help. With each stroke, something inside me hardened. When the paint finally faded, the tears dried up too. I sat at my kitchen table, looked around, and understood something. Candace had been right about one thing. The house needed work. Not because I was worthless, but because I had spent my whole life pouring into others and leaving nothing for myself. I pulled out a notebook and made a list. Paint the walls, fix the bathroom, repair the garden, and replace the curtains. Every criticism she'd thrown became a project, not to impress anyone, but to finally build a home worthy of me. The next morning, I took my small savings out of the bank. I had just over $3,000 left after all the help I'd given Devon and Candace while they lived with me. It wasn't a lot, but this was an emergency, not of money, but of self-respect. At the hardware store, A young employee named Marcus helped me choose paint and supplies. Cream for the living room, pale green for the kitchen, soft yellow for my bedroom. "You're doing all this yourself, ma'am?" he asked, loading the cans into a cab. "Yes," I replied, surprised by the quiet confidence in my own voice. "I am." That afternoon I moved furniture, spread old newspapers, and started painting. I'd never painted a wall in my life. I splattered the floor, dripped on the curtains, and got paint in my hair. But with every brushstroke, I felt like I was covering old wounds with something fresh. Mrs. Jenkins came over, wringing her hands. "You're going to wear yourself out, Eleanor. Hire someone." "I need to do this," I told her. "For me." For 2 weeks, I painted until my arms trembled and my back ached. When I stepped back and looked at the fresh walls, the house felt brighter, and so did I. But at night, one question kept me awake. How is Devon? Was he happy in that mansion? Did he ever think of me? The mother in me refused to die, no matter how hard I tried to bury her. Then I remembered Jasmine Hayes, a friend from my office days. Years ago, she studied nights and became a lawyer. We hadn't talked much lately, but she was one of the few people I trusted. I called her. "Eleanor." "It's been ages," she exclaimed. "How are you?" This time I told the truth. "Not good. I need your help." We met the next day at a small cafe near her office. She walked in wearing a smart suit and carrying a leather briefcase, no longer the shy secretary I remembered. But the warmth in her hug was the same. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about Candace's contempt, Vivien's snide comments, the move to the mansion, the cruel goodbye. I told her about the silence that followed, the graffiti on my wall, the nights I spent wondering what I'd done wrong as a mother. Jasmine listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker. When I finished, she folded her hands. "I'm going to ask you something important," she said. "Whose name is on the deed to your house?" "Mine," I replied. "I bought it with my husband's insurance. Everything's in my name." She nodded, visibly relieved. "Good. Very good. Has Devon ever signed anything that gives him any legal claim to this place?" "No. Never." "Then breathe. This house is legally yours." She hesitated, then added, "What he did, walking out and cutting contact when you're over 60, could be considered elder neglect in some situations. You have more rights than you realize." I stared at her, shocked. "I could sue my own son?" "I'm not saying you should," she replied gently. "I'm saying you're not as powerless as you think. Keep records, texts, calls, or the lack of them. Document what happens. Not because you want revenge, but because you should never again be at someone else's mercy." Her words stayed with me. I am not defenseless. It was such a simple idea, but it rearranged the furniture in my mind. The weeks passed. I kept fixing small things around the house. Marcus came by on weekends to handle what I couldn't do alone. Tightening pipes, replacing fixtures, helping me clean up the backyard. He worked hard and never tried to overcharge me. One afternoon, while I was watering the garden, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mom." Devon's voice. It hit me like a fist to the chest. "Devon." "Yeah. Look, I need a favor." No greeting. No, "How are you?" What kind of favor? "I need a loan. $5,000. I'll pay you back in 2 months. I swear." My heart sank. 5,000. I had just over 5,200 in my account. It was everything I had left. "What do you need the money for?" "It's expenses. Things came up. I can't explain right now." "Oh. I thought you were living like royalty," I said, unable to stop myself. "What kind of expenses does a man in a mansion have?" He let out a sharp breath. "Please don't start. Are you going to help me or not?" His tone hurt more than any insult Candace had ever thrown. I realized at that moment he didn't see me as a mother. He saw me as a resource. You haven't called me once in 3 months, I said. The only time you reach out is to ask for money. No, Devon. I won't lend it to you. Silence. Then, muffled in the background, I heard Candace's voice demanding to know what I'd said. I knew you'd make this about you, he snapped. You always play the victim. Forget it. Goodbye. The line went dead. I stood in the yard, the hose running over my shoes, feeling something break, but not the way it had before. This time, what broke was the last piece of me that begged for crumbs. That night I called Jasmine and told her about the conversation. 5,000, she repeated. Something's wrong. People who are truly wealthy don't scramble for $5,000. Give me permission to do some digging on Vivien. Just a background check. Fine, I said wearily. Do whatever you think is best. A week later she called me into her office again. When I sat down, she slid a folder across the desk. Your glamorous ex-in-law, she said dryly, is a professional illusionist. I opened the folder. Inside were rental agreements, court notices, and financial records. The mansion, Jasmine said. She doesn't own it. She's behind on the rent. Her import business is drowning in debt. Her car is leased. Designer clothes. On credit. She's been living on smoke and mirrors for years. I stared, stunned. And your son, Jasmine went on, isn't a pampered guest. Vivien has been charging him and Candace $2,000 a month to live there. Plus groceries. Plus utilities. She's been squeezing them dry. 2,000. I said helplessly. They could have rented a whole apartment. They could have built a decent life, Jasmine agreed. But they believed her promises about connections and opportunities. She's very practiced at manipulating people who want to feel rich. I closed the folder and leaned back, dizzy. On one hand, I felt grim satisfaction. Candace had traded dignity for luxury and gotten neither. On the other hand, my son, my foolish, easily dazzled boy, had walked straight into a trap. What do I do with this? I asked quietly. For now. Nothing, Jasmine said. Just know the truth. It will matter later. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, the past stood on my porch soaking wet. Devon and Candace huddled under the grey sky, suitcases piled at their feet. The same fancy luggage they'd left with, now scratched and dingy. Their clothes were still expensive brands, but wrinkled and stained. Candy's famous perfect hair hung limp, and her eyes were swollen from crying. Devon couldn't meet my gaze. Mom, he said hoarsely. We need to talk. Can we come in? Behind them, the rideshare driver, Tony, according to his name tag, was wrestling the last suitcase out of the trunk. I didn't move. I simply stood in the doorway, taking them in. 3 months and 2 weeks since Candace had screamed that I should rot in my own home. 3 months and 2 weeks since my son had turned his back on me. Talk. I repeated, my voice eerily calm. How interesting. When you left, there was no interest in talking. Candace flinched. Tony walked up, rubbing his hands against the cold. Ma'am, the fare is $120. Devon patted his pockets. Can I send it by transfer? My app is acting up in this weather. I need cash, Tony said flatly. Candace dug into her purse and pulled out a crumpled 50. Devon checked his wallet and pockets again. Together they scraped up $115. Short by 5. Tony looked at me expectantly. I knew what he was waiting for. The same thing everyone always expected of me. Step in. Fix it. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't call this car. For a moment, all 3 of them just stared. Tony sighed. Fine. 2 days, he told Devon. You don't pay the rest, I report it. He got in the car and drove off, shaking his head. Devon turned back, shivering. Mom, please. We're soaked. Can we come inside? Just for tonight. I looked over my shoulder at my house. Freshly painted walls. Bright curtains. A tidy living room that now felt like mine, not a place I was borrowing from my own son. No, I said. The words seemed to freeze the air. What? Devon whispered. You may not come into my house, I repeated. Not for tonight. Not for an hour. Candace broke down. Eleanor, please. We have nowhere else to go. Vivien kicked us out. We stayed in a cheap motel until our money ran out. Please, just let us sleep here tonight. We'll find somewhere else tomorrow. Oh, I said. Like when you moved in, for just a few months, and stayed nearly 2 years, during which you treated my home like a punishment. I was wrong, she sobbed. I know that now. I believe you're sorry, I said. But you're not sorry for what you did to me. You're sorry that you're the one standing in the rain now. That's not the same. Devon dropped his suitcase with a thud. Mom, I'm your son. Are you really going to leave me out here? Ah. The line every mother dreads. Designed to stab straight into the heart. You left me months ago, Devon, I replied quietly. You chose someone else's roof over mine. You stood silent while your wife insulted me in front of the whole neighborhood. You didn't call once. The only time you picked up the phone was to ask for $5,000, and when I refused, you hung up on me. His face crumpled. We made a mistake, he said. Vivien. You made many mistakes, I cut in. Vivien used you. Yes. But I didn't throw you out. I didn't charge you rent for your own home. I'm not the one who has to fix your choices. By then Mrs. Jenkins and Mr. Powell were outside, watching silently. The same neighbors who'd seen me humiliated now saw me standing tall. For once, I wasn't the one being shamed on my own sidewalk. Fine, Devon said, defeated. What do you want us to do? Get on our knees? Beg. I'll do it. I don't want you on your knees, I replied. I want you to understand that there are consequences. You treated me like an option. I choose not to be one anymore. Candace sank down on the wet pavement, sobbing openly. The sight once would have broken me. Now it only hurts in a distant, complicated way. You know what the worst part is? I said. Even now, you're not here because you miss me. You're here because you ran out of other doors to knock on. Devon tried one last time. You always said family is everything, Mom. I used to say that, I answered. Now I think respect is everything. Without it, family is just a word people use to excuse bad behavior. I stepped back and closed the door. They pounded and called my name. I leaned against the inside of the door, shaking, tears streaming, but I didn't open it. Outside, I heard Mrs. Jenkins's voice. Come on, you two. There's a shelter at Pastor Michael's church. You can stay there for a few days. Mr. Powell offered them some money. Once again, my neighbors showed more mercy than I did. That was their choice. I'd made mine. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my quiet living room, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the rain and to the argument in my own head. One part screamed that I was a terrible mother. Another whispered that, for the first time, I had protected myself. The next day, Pastor Michael came by. Your son asked me to talk to you, he said gently. He told me what happened. Their 3 nights are up at the shelter. I have no more beds. Perhaps you could help them find a place, lend them a little money. With all respect, Pastor, no, I said. He looked taken aback. Eleanor, vengeance is not. This isn't vengeance, I replied. It's boundaries. If I open the door now, nothing will change. They will fall back into using me as a safety net. They're old enough to work, to figure things out like I had to when I was widowed. I won't save them from the reality they created. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. May God give all of you the strength you need, he said, and left. 4 days afterward, guilt and relief wrestled inside me. Then, unexpectedly, a little bit of joy arrived in a cardboard box. Marcus knocked on my door one morning, a shy grin on his face. "My grandma's cat had kittens," he said. "They're ready to go to new homes. I thought maybe you'd like one." I'd never had pets before. Devon used to be allergic as a child, or at least we thought he was. But when Marcus opened the box and a tiny gray kitten with bright green eyes peeked out and meowed, my heart melted. "She's already litter trained," he added. "She's very affectionate. Follow people everywhere." I picked her up. She nestled against my chest and began to purr. "I'll take her," I whispered. After Marcus left, I sat on the sofa with the kitten asleep on my lap. "You need a name," I told her. "How about Luna? A new moon for a new beginning." Luna filled the house with small sounds, tiny paws on the floor, soft purring, the jingle of her collar. Suddenly the rooms didn't feel as empty. On a walk in the park a few weeks later, I bumped into a woman about my age named Ruth. We started talking and quickly realized we had more in common than we expected. Grown children who'd hurt us, long marriages that had ended badly, the experience of having to reinvent ourselves late in life. "It's strangely freeing, isn't it?" she said. "To realize you don't have to live for other people's approval anymore." I thought of Devon knocking on my door in the rain and of myself closing it. It stung, but it also felt like the first step onto solid ground. Meanwhile, neighborhood gossip carried bits of news. Devon and Candace had found a tiny room on the other side of town. Devon was doing food deliveries on a bicycle. Candace was cleaning houses. Once, I spotted her from behind a fence, arguing on the phone with someone, begging for help. She wore the same outfit she'd had on 3 days in a row. Her hair was pulled back in a plain ponytail. I felt no triumph seeing her like that, only a strange, quiet neutrality. They were living the consequences of choices they'd insisted on making. For once, I wasn't rushing in to rescue anyone. Life slowly rearranged itself around me. Ruth dragged me to a Thursday dance class for women our age. The first time I went, I tripped over my own feet and laughed until my sides hurt. By the 3rd week, I could follow the rhythm without thinking too much. For 1 hour a week, I wasn't the mother whose son abandoned her. I was just Eleanor, a woman learning new steps. Back home, Luna followed me from room to room, chasing dust motes and attacking shoelaces. My garden was blooming. The house was lighter than it had ever been. Then one afternoon, at the pet store, I nearly crashed carts with Vivien. She wore big dark sunglasses, her hair less polished than usual, her clothes still expensive but not quite as crisp. For the first time, she looked tired. "Eleanor," she said through tense lips, removing her glasses. "Vivien," I answered. We stood there for a moment, aisle between us, with bags of cat litter on either side. Her gaze flicked over my basket, kitten food, toys, treats, then up to my face, searching for signs of weakness she could poke. "I heard your son and my daughter came crawling back to your doorstep," she said. "And that you didn't let them in." "That's true," I replied. She let out a short, cold laugh. "I can't say I blame you. They were foolish. I thought Devon had more ambition. Turns out he's as soft as his father probably was." Rage flared so hot I saw spots. "Don't you dare speak about my husband," I said quietly. "He was a better person on his worst day than you have ever been." Her eyes narrowed. "Careful, Eleanor." "No," I said. "You be careful. I know about your rented mansion. About your overdue payments. About your business, that's little more than debt and lies. I know you charged my son $2,000 a month for a room you said was a gift." The color drained from her face. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough," I replied. "You used my son's longing to feel important. You dangled status in front of him and then drained him dry. Then, when the money ran out, you threw him out like trash, just like you encouraged him to throw me away." She drew herself up, but her voice shook. "If you repeat any of those accusations, what will you do?" I asked. "Take me to court? I'd love to see your finances examined in front of a judge." Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. There it was, fear. I leaned in slightly. "You thought I was just a poor, stupid woman who didn't know anything. You were wrong. I raised my son alone. I bought and repaired my home alone. And I will not spend the rest of my life being treated like I'm beneath you by someone whose empire is made of smoke." I left her standing in the aisle and went to pay for my things, hands shaking but head high. That evening, Jasmine called, excitement in her voice. "Eleanor, you're going to want to hear this," she said. "Vivien was arrested today. Fraud, tax evasion, fake import deals. All of it finally caught up with her. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected." I sat down hard on the sofa. "Is Devon involved?" "No," she said. "He was just a victim. But any money he gave her? It's gone. Even if she's forced to pay restitution, the people at the front of the line are banks and the government. Whatever your son handed over is never coming back." I stared at the wall for a long time after I hung up. On one hand, the news felt like justice. On the other, I thought of Devon walking into that courtroom and seeing his carefully polished dream turn to dust. He'd lost his pride, his savings, and the woman he'd believed was his golden ticket. Ruth's words came back to me. Sometimes people have to lose everything to see who they really are. The seasons moved on. I kept dancing on Thursdays, walking in the park on Sundays, and having coffee with Ruth in between. Mr. Powell's nephew, Ken, asked if I could advise him about local accounting firms. He'd just moved to town and was looking for work. We sat at my kitchen table going over his resume. He was in his 50s, polite, and quick to laugh. When he left, he thanked me earnestly. "You've been more helpful than anyone else I've talked to here," he said. A month later, he stopped by again, beaming. "I got a job," he announced. "I wanted to take you out to dinner to say thank you." I almost said no out of habit. Then I caught myself. This was my new life. It was allowed to include nice things. "I'd like that," I said. The dinner was simple, at a cozy family restaurant, not some fancy place to impress. We talked for hours. He asked about my garden, my dance classes, and my kitten. He never once asked about my son's job or income. It felt peaceful. Meanwhile, I began receiving envelopes. One night, coming home from Ruth's, I found an unmarked envelope wedged in my front door. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Mom, I know you may not want to hear from me. I got a job at a small engineering firm again. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. Candy and I have a tiny apartment now. We're learning to live with less and appreciate what we have. I know I hurt you in ways I can't undo. I think about it every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I haven't earned that. I just want you to know that I'm trying to become a better man, one you might someday be proud of. Devon." A folded slip of paper fell out, a receipt from a rent payment. Over the following months, more envelopes came. Sometimes they held a short note, sometimes just cash, small amounts at first. "This is for the groceries you paid for while we lived with you. This is for the electric bill you covered. This is for the wedding costs you never asked us to repay." I didn't spend the money. I tucked it all into a drawer along with his letters. I wasn't ready to respond, but I also couldn't throw them away. They were, for the first time, effortless. 8 months after the rainy doorstep scene, spring bathed my garden in color. One afternoon, I saw Devon from my window. He was carrying Mrs. Jenkins's groceries up her steps, listening intently as she talked. When he turned to leave, we locked eyes. He lifted a tentative hand in greeting. For the first time in a long while, I didn't turn away. I nodded once. The small flicker of hope on his face was undeniable. The months continued to roll by, each one layering new routines and small joys onto my days. Thursday dance class became my favorite hour of the week. Ruth organized a holiday dinner for our little group and insisted it be held at my house. "Your place feels warm," she said. "Like a hug." I hesitated, remembering all the times Candace had called it cramped and embarrassing. Then I looked around at the bright walls, the plants, the soft light, Luna sleeping in the corner, and realized it was true. My house felt like a hug, to me most of all. We cooked together, the women bringing dishes and stories. We laughed until we cried, toasted to survival, to second chances, to choosing ourselves. "Look at you, Eleanor," Ruth said, raising her glass. "You were crushed and you rebuilt yourself brick by brick." To the woman who refused to stay broken. We all clinked glasses. I felt tears prick my eyes, not from sadness, but from a fierce, quiet pride. After the others left and the house was calm again, I went out to the garden with Luna curled in my arms. The air was cool and smelled like wet earth and new leaves. That's when I heard the gate squeak open. Devon stood there alone, hands in his pockets. He didn't walk up to the porch or call my name. He stayed by the fence, waiting. "Sorry to come by unannounced, Mom," he said. "I saw the lights and wanted to ask you something." I stayed seated, Luna purring in my lap. "What is it?" "I saw you earlier," he said. "With Ken. You were laughing. You looked happy. I just wanted you to know I'm glad. You deserve that." There was no plea in his voice. "No, so now can we?" Just a simple statement. "Where are you going with this, Devon?" "Nowhere," he said honestly. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect us to go back to how things were. I just hope that one day, when you see me, it doesn't hurt anymore. That's all I can realistically ask for." His words surprised me. He finally understood that forgiveness couldn't be demanded like a favor. "I don't feel anything when I see you," I said slowly. "I still feel pain. But I also see that you're trying. I don't know what our relationship will be in the future. I only know you're not the same man who drove away in that luxury car." He blinked rapidly, nodding. "That's more than I deserve to hear," he murmured. He started to back away. "Devon," I called. He stopped. "Come for dinner next Sunday," I said. "You and Candace. 2:00. Don't be late. It's not a promise of anything. It's just a beginning." Hope flickered, careful and fragile, across his face. "We'll be here." "Thank you, Mom." Sunday came. They arrived on time in their old car, dressed simply. Devon carried flowers for the garden. Candace held a framed photograph. It was an old picture of me and Devon when he was a boy, standing in this very garden. The frame was new. The photo had been cleaned up and restored. "For your wall," Candace said softly. The meal was awkward at first. Long silences. Careful small talk. Then, slowly, the stiffness eased. Devon told me about his job, modest, but steady. Candace spoke about working as a cleaner and how it had taught her respect for people she used to look down on. She mentioned therapy, too, and learning how her mother's obsession with status had shaped her. "I used to think money made people better," she admitted. "Now I know it just makes people more of what they already are." I didn't like who I was. I listened, arms folded, choosing my words carefully. "I'm glad you're both working on yourselves," I said. "But that doesn't erase what happened here. Trust doesn't grow back overnight." "We know," Devon said. "We're not asking you to pretend nothing happened. We just want a chance to show over time that we're different now." When they left, Mrs. Jenkins appeared in her yard, curious. "So," she asked, "did you forgive them?" "No," I answered honestly. But I opened the door a little. Forgiveness, if it comes, is going to be earned, not handed out like candy. I owe that to myself. In the months that followed, the envelopes kept coming. Each one held money and a brief note. "Thinking of you. Tried a new mac and cheese recipe today. Didn't come close to yours. I hope Luna is doing well. One envelope included a photograph of Devon and Candace at a community cooking class, both in aprons, both smiling awkwardly at the camera. On the back, Devon had written, "Learning to appreciate homemade food. Starting with the dish you always made best." I still didn't write back. But every envelope went into the drawer, which was now heavy with paper and effort. Life continued to expand in gentle circles. Ken and I went for walks in the park, shared dinners, talked about books and music, about second careers and late-in-life dreams. There was no pressure, no rush. Just two people enjoying each other's company. Ruth organized another gathering at my house in May. The living room filled with music, conversation, and the click of dancing shoes on the floor. My walls, once faded and tired, glowed under the warm lamps I'd carefully chosen. Sitting there later that night, Luna sprawled across my lap. I thought of the journey from that first awful day on the porch to this quiet, contented evening. I had gone from a woman defined by sacrifice and humiliation to someone who knew her own value. My house, once mocked as a dusty relic, was now a bright sanctuary. Every plant in the garden marked a step in my healing. Every stroke of paint on the walls was a declaration. I matter. My phone buzzed. A text from Devon. "Thank you again for Sunday, Mom. We know we still have a long way to go. We love you." I smiled faintly and put the phone down without replying, not out of cruelty, but because I finally understood something. I didn't have to respond to every message, fix every problem, or carry every burden. I could move at my pace. I looked out at the moonlit garden through the window. This house was no longer the abandoned woman's house. It was my home, my victory, my clean new chapter. I, Eleanor Thorne, at 64, was finally living for myself, not as someone's mother, someone's doormat, or someone's background character, but as the main character of my own life. The past had lost its power. The future, with all its unknowns, no longer frightened me. Luna purred louder, and I stroked her soft fur, letting the quiet joy of the moment sink in. If you enjoyed Eleanor's journey, imagine us sitting together and sharing stories like this one. Tell me which city you're listening from, and if you'd like to hear more lives like hers. Your support, your time, your comments, your kindness helps keep these stories going. Until the next life story, with respect and warmth.